Now, with many taxes that the government has introduced, this has left the business sector in some way confused and trying to get answers as to whether these taxes are going to benefit their businesses. We can also look at the issue of small to medium enterprises, the informal business who have been made to comply with these taxes. This has made them to have many questions. But today we are here at the annual tax review meeting hosted by the Financial Gazette in collaboration with Zeta, as to just to get an understanding of what these taxes are and what the government is aiming to get when they say people should comply to these taxes. My name is Kudzafi Mchenjikwa, and welcome to Your Wealth, a show that looks at all things money, markets and investment. So today you're going to hear much about the taxes and where we are as a nation.
We've seen these progressive reductions in the tax thresholds over the years. If you look at VAT, compulsory VAT used to be at 240,000 per annum, and it has come all the way down to 25,000 per annum, which is almost a tenfold reduction in the threshold. VAT is not an easy tax to comply with. And for us simple minds and simple people, small businesses who cannot afford to engage or engage tax experts and so on, or even multiple staff members to deal with tax issues, that becomes a problem. In the past, I think we used to have voluntary compliance at 5,000 or 60,000 per annum, which was good. Because those who would do it, but at 240,000 per annum, definitely we know that anyone who's at that level already has the setup and infrastructure to be able to comply. But this reduction in the thresholds presents a problem. What it does is it criminalizes most of us, especially the smaller emerging sector members. So our recommendation there to the ministry is that we review these thresholds. Let's take them back to where they were. Let's deal with the real people that must be taxed. Some of this segment that we are trying to move into, the fact of the matter is we are never going to be able to get much out of it, if at all we get anything. But if businesses are growing, they are emerging, they are becoming larger, certainly you are going to realize a lot of tax out of that. So, that's my first recommendation. The next thing I will talk about is what I would call an obsession with direct taxation, because we want everyone to fill in a tax return to say I'm paying my taxes to Zimra. But if you look in the past, we used to have very high compliance or tax collection thresholds. I think at one point we used to collect 25% of GDP, if I'm not mistaken. You may correct me. But why were we able to do that? We were able to do that because we had a highly formalized economy, right? We had, and your big tax heads, it should be your VAT and your PAYE. If you look at those tax heads, they are not taxes paid by companies, but they are taxes collected by companies, right? So VAT, let me start there. VAT is collected from people buying from formal retailers. And we had an excellent network of formal retailers. It was expanding. Your OKs, they'd gone to Mbare, they'd gone to Machipisa. But what did we do? We changed the environment. We've destroyed the formal retail sector. As a result, we've also destroyed your collection of VAT. Because your vendors, your informal sector, etc., all of them will go and pay and shop from your formal retailers. They'll shop from your N. Richards, your Spars, your OKs, etc. And that's where you collect the tax. But if you are going to try and say we want everyone to fiscalize, we want everyone to have a point of sale machine, everyone to have a bank account and so on, I tell you, it's a mammoth task. It's much, much easier just to capacitate your retail sector or your formal sector to collect taxes. The same with PAYE. Informal sector is not going to pay you PAYE. You're not going to realize much, but if you've got a growing formal sector, that's where you actually are able to collect your taxes. But what does this all boil down to? It boils down to a simple thing, the exchange rate. And I'm happy again because this is within the purview of Ministry of Finance. specifically, obviously, the RBZ arm. If you look at the current situation we have, everyone is supposed to use the official exchange rate. And if you look at the official exchange rate from the banks, in fact, I think over the past week or so, we had this email circulating saying people are free to use whatever rate they want to use. And yesterday, is it yesterday or the day before, I think RBZ then clarified and said, no, use the interbank rate. But look at the interbank rate. It's range bound between 26 and 28, right? So that's the official exchange rate. But then we know the market is much higher. And in fact, you've got players like your formal retailers, they're using rates of 31 to 33, right? Which creates confusion for us, because if the interbank is a function of what people are buying foreign currency at, and these formal retailers are saying they are buying at 31 to 33, then how come this rate is stuck at 26? And we are expected to use a rate of 26. So these are the distortions that then disable the formal sector.
So what this route to market did, it came with a lot of challenges. Challenge number one is the high costs of formal compliance. So for you to be able to comply with the route to market, you had to register for VAT. And the VAT registration it comes with registering, you need a consultant for that. And consultants are charging not less than $100, from $100 to $300. That's a cost to the informal trader. For you to also operate under the VAT system, you need to fiscalize. And fiscalization is not a very cheap cost to retailers. It's the prices are ranging from $100 to $1,000, depending on the supplier. So these are costs that have been moved to the retailer by the government. And it's a very huge cost. So now retailers and SMEs are saying, why then should we comply when these costs are being moved to us and no one is assisting us and we cannot do business? So it has eaten into the working capital of these SMEs. Another challenge is that there's limited taxpayer awareness and understanding. Taxpayers are not aware of what it means to be VAT registered. They're not aware of when it's due, when it's paid, how you calculate. So in the end, we're seeing that you have operators who are registered for VAT, but they're not paying anything. One, because they do not know how to pay, when to pay, and what to pay. And this is resulting, when these operators are audited, penalties are raised, and these penalties are then resulting in the debt between ZIMRA and the taxpayers. And what it has also done is, another challenge is increased compliance burden due to route to market. So people have now come up with ways of not registering with ZIMRA, because being on the ZIMRA platform, taxpayers are seeing it as a challenge. So many people have resorted to, maybe if you're buying goods worth 5,000 in a month, you resort to buying 2,000. People are coming with mechanisms of not complying. Also, there's competition from informal traders. Formal companies are failing to compete on a price level. One, because these ones are charging prices that have no VAT in them, duty in them. So it's now a burden for formalized companies to then compete. Then the key policies and tax measures for formal sector protection. Number one, let's have tax reforms. Let's encourage emerging sectors to comply. Instead of enforcing a lot of these heavy taxes on them, those who are willing to comply, let's give them incentives. Let's incentivize them. Let's allow them to pay taxes gradually than putting all the tax burden on them. Also, let's enforce compliance. We're seeing that in Harare there's been a trend of ZIMRA approaching shop by shop, closing them because they're saying you have smuggled goods. But we're also asking that these goods, they came in through the border. How then did ZIMRA not allow these goods to come in and then now go on to shops closing them because they're saying they've been smuggled? So let's enforce compliance on the border. It helps then to allow traders to then do business than coming into shops every single day asking for receipts. And also, let's also prioritize taxpayer education. Taxpayers, they want to comply. It's not an issue of not wanting to comply. People are not sure how to comply, when to comply. It's a challenge to ZIMRA and the ministry to say that let's put more funding in educating taxpayers, allow them to grow, allow them to bring out their questions without penalizing them, help them day by day. And I feel this will improve revenue collection.
Who would remember the previous brands like Nyore Zimbabwe Furniture? When you were having your tea on Sunday, you see them delivering your furniture. The Pelhams of the days and so on, those brands. And I think what is critical is that from the book that I read on commerce, there was always a value chain. A farmer will not be a seller and so on. But the agent theory is killing the country. But the point is, the law does not create vacuum. And why are those people in those space? Because there is an opportunity. They are dying brands, and so there is an opportunity to get more. And we need to create a good environment for doing business. And I think only yesterday I read in the newspaper about the ministry, is it Ministry of Public, local government, making efforts to clear everyone in the streets and ensure that OK is able to sell. But the question is, we need better working environment for both formalized and informal businesses, as well as the SMEs, to allow them to prosper by removing some of the penalties. Like I said initially, when we look at our tax regime, it might not be as bad, but we've got many and surrogate taxes. So they create an assumption that we've got too many taxes. Why not taking IMTT and add it to VAT if that's what we are looking for, and remove all those other taxes?
Interestingly enough, there's 93 taxes, and they come in all shapes and forms, and we all interact with them in different ways, some of them indirectly, and some of them directly. So if there's a professional services tax on me, I'm also going to levy some form of a tax and pass on that expense to the consumer. So this is just a fun fact that we actually have a lot of taxes in the country. And I think that brings us to the next thing. And I just want to quote a gentleman, Anonzim, Sylvester Mpanduki, who actually did this analysis. So whilst Mr. Pera was saying that, Mr. Pera is my sensei in tax, and he actually said that he's taught a lot of people that we have a lot of, in terms of rates, they're not fantastic, but I think the number of taxes and the things that you need to do to comply it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. So I'm here to talk to you about the challenges and the opportunities of the 2025 tax environment for the construction sector, and maybe even for the Zimbabwe economy at large. The first thing I want to maybe just say is that from time immemorial, the issue of taxes has been a problem because people don't want to pay tax. When we look at even in the days of Jesus, you know, one of the questions that he was asked was who you should be paying taxes to. So in the environment that we're in at the moment, I don't think we're an exception to the rule that people don't want to pay their taxes. But I also think that we need to recognize something about the taxes, that the taxes are a requirement for us to achieve the level of development that we want. So just quickly touching on the Zimbabwean economy and the construction sector, the slide there just shows what the makeup of the Zimbabwe economy. We can see that services is the services sector is the largest one, and the construction sector falls within the manufacturing sector, but is a small portion of the manufacturing sector. So you know, you'll think that okay, construction is small, but when you just move around in Harare and maybe just even across the country, you can see that there's quite a lot that is happening within the sector. And I also want to highlight that, touching onto the vision of Zimbabwe, which is to become an upper middle economy by 2030, there's a few things that I'll want to maybe just look at. The first is that, I mean, an earlier presentation, I think Mr. Tapera mentioned that, like, We were talking about collections of 4 billion a few years back, we moved to 6 billion, and now we're looking at going to 7.5 billion. And we are actually feeling the effects of this increased budget, because we have seen a lot more efforts by those who collect taxes to work towards the collection of those taxes, and then maybe this is why certain authorities may come off as being a bit aggressive. But you know, there's a high ambition, and we need to get to where we want to be, which is the upper middle economy by 2030. But the question that I would like to pose to us is that, are we going to be able to get to that vision of the upper middle economy with the current challenges that we face with electricity? Or do we require an investment in electricity or in electrification? Are we going to get to being an upper middle economy by 2030 with the current roads that we have? Or do we need some investment within that sector? So the basic thing is that with the current economy that we have, or the current resources that we have to support economic growth, it'll be difficult to become an upper middle economy by 2030. And because of that, we are going to require investment from government. We are not seeing the kind of investment that we would like to see in the infrastructure space. One, because we're all aware that a lot of the capital that is available in Zimbabwe is short-term capital. So you can't go and build a road that is going to take, where you're going to recover your capital costs over 20 years with 3-year capital. That's just a no-no. So how are we going to be able to build those roads, to electrify, and just to provide all the other necessary resources that we're going to need to grow the economy? It's going to be through government spending. And so government is able to mobilize a lot more larger resources, and they're also able to allow for longer payback period for people within the construction sector. So I'm also speaking, like I said, from a construction perspective, where we know that government has actually come to the construction sector and said, you know what, we don't have the resources that we need to continue with the infrastructure development that is required. So they're encouraging players within the construction sector to start to enter into PPPs, where the private sector will also come in with capital alongside with government. So in my view, a little bit controversial, but I actually think that when we see an increase in government spending in infrastructure, this will allow us and all the other sectors to benefit, and this will be able to allow the nation to attract the investment that it requires.
So we are still here at our tax review meeting, breakfast meeting rather, which has been hosted by Financial Gazette and Zita. And right now I am joined by Prince Makoni, who is a tax executive at Tax Minds. And we're just going to ask him a bit of questions in regards to his presentation that he has made. And how are you, Mr. Zimbabwe?
I'm well.
Awesome. Mr. Prince. Now, let me get straight to the question, Mr. Prince. You spoke about engagement with ZIMRA. Now, my question to you is it necessary and is it worth it, considering, all those issues that have been raised by the business community?
Yeah, certainly. It is very important, and it is an issue that all taxpayers need to also engage with ZIMRA. ZIMRA is the single institution that has been tasked with the collection of revenue in Zimbabwe. And as such, you cannot run away from ZIMRA. You need to engage with them from time to time to get to know the new rules where you are taxpayers. Most of the taxpayers do not have access to consultants, access to tax lawyers and the like. So you also need to get in touch with ZIMRA from time to time to get the new rules, what has been going on. ZIMRA's rules have been changing. We've been talking about the number of rules that have been introduced. in the past 2 years, quite a number of them, and you need to keep abreast to avoid penalties to be levied on you, to avoid interest. You know, Zimra will then come to you. If you are not compliant, when it hits you hard, and you need to avoid such kind of issues.
Well, you spoke about numerous taxes that we have in Zimbabwe, and also during this meeting we realized that we have got 93 taxes that are in Zimbabwe, not verified of course, but this is something that has been raised. My question to you is, has these taxes been simplified for the taxpayers to know what they are getting themselves into and what they are giving their monies to?
Basically, the number of taxes that have been said to be 93, some are levied at the central level, central government, and others are for the local government. So combined, they become 93. But however, there's need to harmonize these taxes. You cannot operate with those such a heavy burden, trying to know which tax to apply and where to get those things done from office to office. You'll be hoping. It's like walking in the dark. So there's need to harmonize tax systems. There's need to bring about simplicity. We have heard the Zimra team talking about the app which they are going to introduce in order to tap into the informal sector. So with a simplified tax code, we are going to have new and increased revenues. We are going to, tax system by design should be something that boosts investment. It's something that assists taxpayers to make decisions. Without a simplified tax code, it confuses the taxpayers. We need the taxpayers to be abreast of new developments. We need taxpayers to comply. And to comply, you need just a certain kind of tax system. You need it to be simplified. Zimra have talked about the new tax app, which is coming up, and we are looking forward to it. It should tap into the informal sector. But removing this tax ambiguity will be something that enhances and boosts, one, investment, two, compliance, and national development.
So we are here at the annual tax reform meeting where we were joined by Mr. Simbarasha Amudi, who is a tax expert who is at Bakatili. So, Mr. Amudi, I'm just going to ask you a few questions in regards to what you've said during the breakfast meeting. And I want to find out how has been the response to the taxes that the government has introduced specifically to the business people in Zimbabwe.
I think the response has been good, considering what Zimra has been doing in terms of administration. Zimra has played a greater role in educating the taxpayers. We have seen a number of public notices, and from the presentation that was done by Zimra, it shows that they had more than 30,000 new registrants. So the response has been good from the taxpayers, and I think the new legislation, which is the Finance Act, is creating an environment where everyone would comply, and we have seen even the SMEs starting to comply now.
Well, now the issue of non-compliance has been topical, especially on this breakfast meeting. Now, what is Zimra going to do in order to make sure that everyone complies, and also even the small business that are going to, formalize that they are going to comply? What are they going to do?
Zimra is doing a number of issues. Number one, they have said that very soon we have a point of sale that we will be able to download from our phones, laptops, iPads, where those that do not have the revenue to purchase accounting systems, point of sales, and a number of items like that will be able to use the system that is being created by Zimra for free. And we have seen Zimra conducting a number of taxpayer education programs where the taxpayers are being educated, and this will help a number of taxpayers in order to comply. And we have seen the roadmap that was presented by the Minister of Finance earlier this year on a number of issues that they are planning to do in order to ensure that there is full compliance amongst the taxpayers. And if this is followed thoroughly, we'll see a number of taxpayers complying, and the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority being able to meet their 2025 revenue target.
Well, thank you very much, sir, for coming through, and I hope to see you next time on the show as we get to explain more on the issues to do with taxes. Thank you. All right, thank you.